creativity, critical thinking, empathy, problem solving, collaboration, standardization,
picture for you. There's a young boy sitting at a kitchen table with his father, and he's bubbling in answers to a practice test or a standardized test that he is going to be taking at school. And he is consumed with anxiety. He's just a ball of nervous energy. And his father, Mr. Wilburn, turns to him and says, "Well, son, I know you have to take this, but not necessarily something with which I agree."
And his son turns back to him and says, "But Dad, I just want to do really well on this test, because if I don't do well, then they may fire my teacher." And he says to his son, "Well, all you can do is go to school and do the best that you can, and just know that this test won't have any impact on your teacher this year, but in future years it might." And here we have our new environment of standardized testing. And as Mr. Wilburn sat there with his son, trying to console him, trying to let him know that everything was going to be okay, an idea popped into his head as he stared down at those answers on that sheet of paper. The answers A through D. And he thought, wow, those answers correspond with musical pitches. And then he thought, what if I took those answers and I created a piece of music from them? And so you just heard that piece of music. Mr. Wilburn contacted a colleague of his, Matt Brusovsky, and had him write this piece for you. And it started with the 14 answers to that particular standardized test, A through D. And we were able to match that up with some movement on stage. And the actors were coming in to take a test. And each answer and each note was marked by a different movement on stage. And then the music shifts, and it's different, and beautiful, melodic. And the students in the piece realize that there's something more to life than simply sitting here at a desk, bubbling in answers. And they push the desks away, and they begin to discover themselves, and discover a sense of freedom, a sense of creativity. But in the end, they realize that they have to return to those desks, and music then repeats itself, and we're brought right back to where we began. And we hope that through the piece we were able to communicate some of that anxiety, some of that frustration that Mr. Wilburn's son felt as he sat there at his kitchen table, bubbling in the answers on that practice test.
There were lots of musical elements and theatrical elements in that particular performance. Harmony, form, melody. None of those are what's truly important. Creativity, analytical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, those are truly the important elements of that performance. In fact, there's research to suggest that those types of intelligences are more predicative, or may be more predicative, of academic and non-academic success than high school GPA or standardized test scores. I think this research resounds so soundly with me based on my experiences as a student. I wasn't a great student, but I wasn't a bad student. I graduated high school with a 3.7 GPA. My SAT score was in the 1100 range. But before you all judge me too harshly, please remember, I did all of that pre-Google. So I'm actually really, really smart. It may be these other intelligences, these unique attributes that aren't measured on a test, that helped me get into college. You know, tests seldom gave me the opportunity to communicate or fully elaborate myself the way that I wanted to. And I'm certain that the test score was never able to fully measure my capabilities or my potential based on my answers or my score. I'll never forget my experience in my undergraduate admissions interview. I came into the office, and I still remember this gentleman's name. Chris Harris was my admissions counselor. And we were talking and just sharing some ideas and thoughts, and he finally says to me, "Aaron, you want to be a music educator, so why don't you perform for me today?" Well, I was really nervous. I didn't want to perform, and a thought popped into my mind. "Chris, I can't perform for you. I'm a cellist. I don't have my instrument." And he goes, "Well, that's nonsense. If you're going to be a music teacher, surely you can perform some other way. You've had to have sang a song before. Sing a song for me. Just come on, perform. Do something." And so I realized in that moment I had two choices. One, I could fail this interview miserably and spend the foreseeable future in my parents' basement, which didn't appeal to me or them, I'm sure. Or two, I could try something that wasn't traditional. I could be creative, I could be unique, and I had an opportunity to do something that was all my own. So I accepted Chris's challenge, per se, and I stood up and I sang for him. But I wasn't done, and I didn't know it at the time. Chris jumps up from behind his desk, and he grabs me and says, "Come with me," and we go racing out of his office. And we run out into the lobby of the admissions office. And Chris says, "Hey, everyone, this is my friend Aaron Wilburn. He's going to be a music education major. He wants to teach you a song." So, in a room full of strangers, much like now, I looked and I said, "I'm a little teapot, short and stout. I'll spare you the rest." So what does that have to do with us here today? What does any of that have to do with standardized testing? We live in an era where we hear an increasing amount about value added and racing to the top, assessment and accountability, yet none of these things that we just mentioned are testable or quantifiable, but we can provide these opportunities. Department of Education leaders have said that in some places, testing and test preparation dominates the culture of the schools. In fact, a 2013 Gallup poll showed that 77% of Americans thought that testing has either hurt or at the very least not helped improve the quality of education. 77% hurt or not improved education. Please don't think that I'm saying tests are evil. Tests are not inherently evil. It's important to be able to gather baseline information. Our students must take tests in order for us to know what you know and understand, and how we can better serve our students, and what we can do to improve your knowledge on a concept. The problem that I see is twofold, however. It's when the frequency and duration of the testing becomes to the point that it's become. And secondly, when we allow this data to drive funding, policy, curriculum, and instruction rather than guide it. So what can we do to change this current paradigm in education?
I still sing I'm a Little Teapot. Not very well, and I'm not going to sing it for you now. But I would like to pour out a bit of a solution for you. So we have three ideas, three potential solutions for the problem that Mr. Wilburn just presented. One is to take the standardized tests that we have and find a way to streamline them and to make them more accessible, because we simply have too many. Number two, we want to find a way to engage students by incorporating the arts and humanities into every child's education, because through the arts and humanities, you have the potential of engaging the whole child. And that, to us, is incredibly important, and can work on those invaluable 21st century skills that we've been describing this entire discussion. And three, we want students to become invested in their own communities and find ways to tackle systemic inequity in their own neighborhoods. We need to spur students to action. So to the first solution. Right now, we're in the midst of standardized testing at the high school here in Albany, and I know it's the same throughout the state of Ohio. And we're also in the midst of testing at the middle school and in the lower grades as well. We have a modified schedule today. Mr. Wilburn and I were looking at each other earlier, wondering if one of our performers was going to be able to make it here for this talk because she was taking a test. And so we just feel that the testing has grown and grown and grown. Students are now taking PARCC exams. They're still taking Ohio graduation tests. We also have the ACT tests, the SAT tests, AP tests, and the list goes on and on and on. So why can't we take this testing and find a way to streamline it? One example, one thought, might be to take the ACT and the SAT, which I know target different areas of the brain, and combine them into a single test. A test that might have multiple parts. The first part targeting more logic-minded students, the second part targeting students who think in a more abstract manner. But that would certainly be a way to streamline the test that students are having to take. And again, we're not saying that testing is evil, because standardized tests do have a purpose. And we need to collect data. We need to find out data about our students and the way that they're learning. But there are different ways to collect that data. Mr. Wilburn and I collect that data all the time. And we formatively assess students constantly, providing them with direct feedback based upon what we see, what we hear. Number two, as you saw, the arts and the humanities have a way to engage students in a way that many other areas don't. And through the arts, not only can you learn essential skills like creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, problem solving, but you also discover what it means to be human and what your place is in this world and how you relate to the billions of other people on the planet Earth. And the arts are a way that we can make sense of it and share our collective beauty with each other. And finally, we have to find a way to engage students in our communities. And we want students to be civic-minded. We want students to go out into the communities, to look at the communities and say, how can we improve? What can we fix? What problems can we solve?
And a specific example of engaging students in the community is a recent production I directed here at the high school called the Learn Me Project Cycle. We directed this production last spring, and it is about the town of Learn, Wyoming, and their response to the killing of Matthew Shepard in 1998. And we were specifically targeting issues of acceptance and advocacy. We wanted to make sure that everyone here, not only on the district's campus, but within the community, felt like they had a place, like they had a role within our common society. And so we began to spread that message, but we also looked at the wider Central Ohio community and found ways to partner with other organizations and to bring those organizations in to strengthen that message and to begin tackling that problem and spreading that message, starting that conversation. And it was incredibly effective. So we started with a piece of theater that was based in reality, but then we broadened the scope. And we were able to at least begin a dialogue about these issues, which is so incredibly important. So these are just 3 ways that we could possibly confront this problem that we pose. Streamlining standardized testing, incorporating the arts and humanities in curriculums, and also finding a way to engage students in their communities so they can begin solving the problems that confront us every day.
Mr. Lemberg and I would like to leave you with this last thought. Great music, theater, art, literature, and we would argue even education is great in part because at its essence, it is complex. It is multifaceted, and it is ambiguous. And it requires all of us to come together with our own sets of understandings, knowledge, and perspective to work together to solve a problem or begin to have a conversation. Our students need more opportunities where they can put those skills, those knowledges, those intelligences to work. Knowledge is limited. Creativity is universal. Thank you.